You're good to go.
All right. We're all set. Welcome back for another day of the Director's Workshop here at West Texas A&M University. Today, our clinician is Mr. Anthony Rivera from Richland High School. He's Associate Director there. He's a former graduate assistant here at West Texas A&M, and I always think, well, actually I've from all the way back in the day, once a GA, always a GA. But it is a two-way street for us. But great guy. We built some great memories while he was here. He's gone on to a great career teaching. So please welcome Mr. Anthony Rivera. But I should say something more about him. When he came as an undergrad, he was a pretty weak tuba player. It was pretty sad. I didn't realize, and then he left, like, incredible. I didn't realize he wasn't that weak at all. When did you start playing?
My senior year of high school.
Senior year of high school. So as a freshman, I was like, man, yeah, he's all right, but he's not so great. And then, boom, it just exploded. He'd been playing for a year when I met him, and I didn't even know. So it was like, what I thought was, he's okay, was like outrageously crazy. So he's basically a seventh grader. His humor's still around seventh grade level.
Yep.
But so is mine. So again, please welcome Anthony Rivera.
So a little bit more of a backstory on that. Just on my end of things, being a young, super young tuba player is, when he says I suck, like I was really not good. I came in and I was like, I want to try and make the top band. So let's look at the music. I was like, how hard can tuba music be? And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, that's hard. I was like, I think he gave me a clarinet part. I was like, no, it's too hard. And it was music from like Rocky Point Holiday, Music of the Spheres. It was ridiculous. And so it was very intimidating. And so right off the bat, I was struggling just to be on my feet around people that had played for 6 more years than me at the very least. And what I love about WT is that they took me where I was, and I remember my audition was like super okay. And Rivera was like, you know, you have a lot to learn as far as playing, but I really like your drive, and I think you're going to be successful. And so they were kind enough to give me a scholarship and allow me to study here. And so I owe WT so much for my success and everything that they've done for me. So I just want to thank you all so much. So my clinic today is on culture versus compliance. And let me kind of define that for you. Culture to me is something that is inherent. It's something that's always going to be there no matter what. It's something that we always strive for. And I think if you look at everything in the lens of culture, your success is going to be derived from that. And compliance is like super minute little things that happen in the day, like, hey, stay in your seat. Hey, don't put up your instrument yet. Hey, the bell hasn't rung, or whatever. Those are things that are compliance, because that's going to show that students understand what they're working towards and what the goal is, and so they're going to have to work for compliance. And I'm going to show you the different things that you'll see in your program on that, and how to develop culture. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is your why? So the why is the driving force behind everything we do. We like to think that accolades, trophies, result-based achievements are what our why is, and I mean, if that is your why, then that's kind of a very shallow way to think of music education in general. So I would challenge you to think of other things. I mean, pushing for winning is a good means for motivation, but if that's your only goal, then when you don't achieve those things, your students are going to feel unachieved, and that's not really the goal of music education. Yes, there's competitive, and yes, I love competition. I want to embrace that C word. However, I feel like when it's your why, that's when your program really suffers and kids don't feel like they're getting what they need out of music or what they should get out of music. So let me show you a video that's going to explain this better than I ever will. And this is something that I saw when I was at Michigan State last month for their conducting symposium. And so this is a part of a presentation by Emily Trinan. She's a professor or the director of bands at University of Minnesota. And so this is going to explain kind of what I'm getting at here and give you more of a tangible explanation on it.
So where do you start when you have a program that's about integrating likes with passions? Well, you start with why. Why? And that kicks us off for the first speaker tonight, Simon Sinek, in his talk, Start with Why.
We assume even we know why we do what we do. But then how do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered man flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered man flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs.
I kind of get the gist from that. And obviously you can tell it says like pre-2010. So we don't really use DVRs anymore. But you can see that the why statement is pretty powerful. Let me just talk about what we kind of believe at Richland. So I'm going to do a result-based statement, kind of the what and the how. The Richland Band is an organization on campus that has experienced success at the region, state, and national levels in marching and concert band. Numerous students have received individual accolades as all-state musicians and world-class drum corps members. Cool. Like that sounds pretty interesting. But what does that hold for the future? There's so many questions still unanswered from that. And so a better statement would be the Richland Band is an organization on campus that teaches students discipline and mastery of music to push the high school marching band and concert band mediums to new avenues. Students are challenged to perfect their craft, resulting in a deep respect for the organization, their instructors, and their peers. These ideals create consistent, successful achievements from the region to the national level, with students achieving individual accolades that will instill success beyond high school. To me, that's more of a constant thing that's never going to change. It's always going to be successful. And on the back of our shirt, and every rehearsal ends with confidence, passion, performance. That's not any kind of result-based kind of idea. It's all going to be evolving. It's all encompassing. And so whenever we end rehearsal, that's always something we say. And the drum line does a dumb little ditty that we play all year. Anytime we end any performance, it actually is pretty funny. So reading those two, you kind of see why it's important to think about that. And the what and the how is not going to get you through the grind of mid-September marching band when literally everything sucks because we're still trying to figure out everything. Everything is still new. When you're in mid-concert season, when everything is still like super okay, what's going to get you to the next level? And it's just thinking about the why throughout that process. So after you've established that, you want to think about your vision. What does your band program look like? Do you have a vision for every detail? And when I say detail, I'm talking about how should students walk in the room? How should a water break look like in marching band? Do kids leave rehearsal on their own? What should a student do before the bell rings? What should it look like when a band gets inside the stands? What should your band look like in a warm-up lot? What should your band look like in the warm-up room for a concert performance? How should your band get on stage? How do you ensure that the band setup is exactly the same? We saw Hebron High School do this, and it has helped our concert performances a lot. They measure every single row away from the podium, so that way when they go on stage, it's exactly the same, no matter what venue they're in. And they perform everywhere, and they sound incredible everywhere. So that's something that we kind of stole from them, for lack of a better word. And we have had great performances because of that, because they're super consistent. So whatever that vision is, your vision is you. Whatever you want to see implemented in any band program, whatever you think is the perfect band program, you do it. It shouldn't be you copying and pasting what other band programs do, but you should have a vision that's you, and you should be able to implement that easily. So on the last part, it says motivation versus discipline. In the past couple of years, I've done a lot of book reading on Navy SEALs and just like what their training is, and it's so insane because they are awake for a week during what they call Hell Week, and they're in a frozen ocean basically doing all their drills, and it's so intense. And when, like, there's going to be probably more than half of the class quit, and so they go and ring the famous bell, and that means one of them is out, and so that bell is ringing all throughout the week, and it's super intense. But they talk about the discipline that is needed to be successful in that. And I highly recommend you read any Navy SEALs book because it's super applicable to what we do. And they are very successful in business consulting, which is wild because they talk about leadership and things like that. But there's Jocko Willink's books and David Goggins' books. Those are super, super good. And they have challenged myself in ways that I didn't think I was going to be challenged in. So, know the difference between those two. Motivation is constantly fleeting. It's going to get you through the next 5 minutes, but it's not going to get you through a rehearsal getting through the entire Hindeman Symphony. It's not going to get you through an entire marching season. You have to have discipline to get all that. And where that starts, that's going to start in the staff. So you want to model discipline, and in order for that to happen and for the kids to have that, you're going to want to also have healthy relationships. You have to have positive relationships with your kids, always be able to, motivate them from time to time, but definitely instill discipline in them. I'm a very intense teacher, and not because I want to be mean or anything like that, but it's because I believe that any student can be successful, and it's my job to help the kids where they are and help them get to the next level. And so in order for me to do that, I have to have relationships with them. And one of my mentors, who's near and dear to my heart, is Cody Myers. And when I first started teaching, he told me this: I wanted my students to know that I was there for them, that I cared for them, and that we're going to have fun. However, once rehearsal started, they knew we had a task at hand, and we meant business. So if anybody knows Cody Myers, once rehearsal starts, it is very intense. Tamarie was in his band. And though at the same time, he was the biggest teddy bear. And I took that and I was like, okay, we'll see how that works. It's kind of like Jekyll and Hyde, but I did that, and my kids love me, and they still love me to this day. It gets very intense in rehearsals, but after rehearsals, like, we'll talk about Call of Duty, we'll talk about stuff that they do outside of school, we'll talk about football, and we always get in fights about the Cowboys, which is super fun. But that model has really helped me out in just having those relationships and getting a lot of stuff done. With parents are super important, no matter if you're at the middle school or the high school level. Granted, at the high school level, they are super involved because there's marching band and things like that, and so those are the people that are going to help you move equipment on the field on and off, help you with medical emergencies and things like that. Really take time to invest in them. In middle school, the best thing that I ever did was just call parents, not when their children are misbehaving, but when their children are doing incredible things. And what's cool is those parents are always on my side no matter what, and they were just instrumental in growing my program and really helping with the culture because it also added a sense of community to it beyond the campus. At Richland, my head director does not do anything at all in the first and second quarter or third and fourth quarter with the high school band. He's out talking to parents, building those relationships, and thanking them for what they do. And myself and the other assistant, we run the marching band, and I mean, it's a big responsibility for us, so we enjoy having that. But I do think it's important that he invests time in building relationships with the parents because they're going to help us do anything we ask them to. It's like, hey, we want to get this 2-ton prop on the field. They're like, okay, we'll figure it out. Like this year, we're like, hey, we're going to make a big volcano. They're like, okay, we'll figure it out. And like literally in 2 weeks, they had a volcano model built, and it was pretty impressive. And that's because we have such a great relationship with them. And then lastly, administrators. I've had administrators, luckily, that have pretty much all been incredible. There was a couple times where I had some that I would fight against, and honestly it was because I didn't have a relationship with them. And funny story, I was taking a lot of golf lessons, and so I went to the driving range after rehearsal one day, and I was driving in, and I swear to you, told my wife this, and I swear to her too. No one ever parks on this side of the parking lot of that golf course. And so I was driving in, looking over here where I was going to park, and I didn't look over there, and then boom, somebody hit me. And so luckily my car was drivable, theirs was not. And so I had to go through all the insurance stuff, whatever, and then I had to do the claim, and then I got a date, which was like 3 months later because they were backed up. This was like super close post-COVID. And so I had to go like in December, and it was September. So fast forward to December, we're rehearsing, and there's literally 3 tornadoes in DFW. It's wild. And so everyone's freaking out. And I was like, what are we going to do? And my head was like, we're going to rehearse. I was like, oh, okay. Because we're in a tornado shelter, so it's going to be fine. And then so we kept rehearsing, and then the principals came and was like, we really got to go into another room. So they sent us to another room, and we're all in there with these kids in a practice room. And it was also the same day that I had to take in my pickup. So I was like, well, I think I can cut 2 birds with 1 stone, or kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and take my truck in while we're doing this, and then we'll be good for the next period. And so I did that. And so I get back, and I'm greeted by my head director. He's like, hey, the principal wants you in the office right now. And so I go in there, and he didn't tell me anything. He's like, you got to go now. And so I go in there. I walk in. He slams the door. He's like, tell me why you left. I think it was 70 kids unattended during a tornado. They were alone. And I was like, when did I do that? And I was shocked because I had told my head director what was going to happen, but he didn't know that there was 3 other directors with the kids, and I told him that that was my only window to get my vehicle in, and that my hands were tied behind my back. And he's like, oh, I thought you just left the kids to die. I was like, no, I just find out. And so we laughed about it, but I think had I not have met him every morning, because I get there super, super early. And we always walk in at the same time because I'm stealing his water. And I always see him every morning, and we talk. And I think had I not had that relationship, I would have been in big trouble. I would have been clapped like 3 different ways. So I'm excited that I still have a job, thanks to my relationship. So the next thing I want to talk to you about in helping with your culture is mentors. And I'm not talking about mentors like, you want to have them out. You want to have them help you teach your program and things like that. But you want them to look at your entire program. Look at the culture of the program. Ask, why don't your kids, or they'll ask you, why don't your kids warm up before class starts? Are they not motivated to play the program that you selected? Do you not have enough discipline in the band to where we can enter the room silently and be organized? Those are the bigger things that mentors do for us. They tell us everything that's going to be a problem with our culture. So here's some questions that my mentors have asked me. Why do your students enter the room that way? Why does the student repeatedly get off task on the field? Why does classroom instruction work so well in the classroom and not on the field? Why do you allow this behavior? Do you know what you're looking for in this section of music? Do you know what a characteristic 3rd octave flute sound is? Cindy Bullock. And so these are all questions. Yes, they're pretty tough, but they're things that I can turn around and look in the mirror and improve upon. Because I want to be the best teacher for my students, and I want them to have a culture and a program that they're proud of, and something that's going to motivate them to be disciplined. While these are not super huge problems, they're going to definitely diagnose bigger problems that are in your band. It's like, this section gets off task a little bit, but what's that section going to look like in October? What's it going to look like when we're trying to get on the field for a big performance? What's it going to look like when we're trying to do our 3rd honor band recording? Those are all things that are going to show up later. So let's talk about the characteristics of a band program culture. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about material covered? Anything that we do as far as culture is concerned? Hopefully we'll have some more as we go on. But I'm going to do a naughty thing as a presenter and read these verbatim, but this is the characteristics of a culture. So procedures are well established and any distractions are immediately ignored. Students take initiative in their own discipline. Students help each other. Students always feel safe. Students take initiative in their own idiomatic daily drill. Personal problems are handled outside of rehearsal or professionally. Students always feel accountable for their success and those around them. Effective lesson plans are executed at a high level consistently. Students are very punctual with all rehearsal attendance. Conducting gestures are effective and rehearsed. Every rehearsal starts on time and ends on time. That's a big one. I'm not talking about it starting, maybe a minute after the time it's supposed to start or 2 minutes. To me, it's super important that we start right on time. And last season at Richland, we got to a point to where we would go out 5 minutes before rehearsal and everyone's doing their own fundamental block. We didn't start it. We can't legally require that, but the kids wanted to be successful and have all the stuff that we're going to hit in that lesson plan taken care of before we start. So band program culture hopefully will be attained during mid-season. Like let's say if you're a middle school band, you want to have that achieved by October. If you're a high school band, hopefully by late September, but it's okay if things still happen. But if you see stuff on the field or stuff in class that's not indicative of the culture, a good way to think of what's going on is if, like, you see something off task, if one of the kids around them is not fixing that, then that tells you that nobody in the classroom has a culture yet. There's still things to work on. Is there bullying in the organization? Bullying is a big problem. It's been a problem for a long time and it's still going to be. They're teenagers. But in our organization, we handle that both with the directors and the administration, and we talk to parents. So all that stuff always gets handled, and it's your responsibility to have a safe space for your kids. When you get on the podium, do the students, are they playing their first note with you? If they do, that's a sign of really bad culture. And one thing that we do at Richland in every single class is we have a timed lesson plan, and we're super hardcore about it. Like at 10 o'clock, we're going to start whatever fundamental block. At 10:05, we're going to start introducing this. At 10:15, etc. It's all timed. We as all directors know the schedule, and it's also passed through to our leadership team, or it's written on the board for concert band. That stuff is super important. But let's talk about compliance and what that would look like. So students are following the procedure are in the minority and ask what are we doing several times. They don't have a lesson plan in front of them. Students run the rehearsal. We performers never get any help. Environments are very fragile. Students are not focused due to factors outside of the rehearsal. Students making their first sound with the director, big no-no, because that's going to be a very weak sound. There's limited student accountability. There's ineffective and unclear conducting, and students trickle in and out of rehearsal. Let's talk about fragile environments. It's really indicative in marching band because we get such colorful language on the field because we're right next to a big main road that all the students drive by, and we get colorful language or things thrown at us like F you or whatever, things like that. It's just like that happens at every march rehearsal. Someone will honk and do all that stuff, and our kids are really trained to ignore that because that's going to happen anywhere you go. There's a famous Will Ludlow story on that. But that stuff happens, and unfortunately, it's going to happen again. And so our kids are super aware of just being on the task at hand. In concert band, we have a principal that loves to make announcements all the time, and our students are trained to ignore it. We will talk over it, we will play over it, nobody will stop, and then one director will step out in the hallway and listen to the announcements to see if they're really important. Most of the time they're not, but people just like hearing their voices, and that's okay. So if you look at the beginning of your rehearsal and your kids are on their phone, they're not looking at whatever passages you have written on the board, then that tells you that there's low culture. And it's okay to teach culture. You want to teach your kids how to walk in the room, how to prepare for whatever task they have, and teach them to look on the board. We often say, all right, get up the next piece. And if we get a hand up, it's like, oh, what's next? One over here, just like Dr. Garner does. So that stuff is super important to me because it's going to make for a very structured rehearsal. So let's talk about what starts all this. It's all going to come from the directors, the staff, the private lesson teachers. They're all going to have the model of what to be. If your why resonates in you, then the kids are going to see that, they're going to do that and model it every day. If you're lazy and not bothered by people not following procedures, they're going to do that too. And if stuff isn't working, that's okay. Change it. There's always time to change things. But don't be quick to do it. You have to give things time. You have to reinforce before things really take effect. But like I said, you must model that. Too often I go to marching band rehearsals, and they always put that model on the drum majors, which is fine. They should have a big role in that. However, it doesn't rest squarely on their shoulders. It does square right on the head director's shoulders and then the assistants. They have to model that vision. And you want your kids to be able to take feedback, to be willing to improve. And so when you have mentors out, they see that you're getting feedback and critiqued on what you're doing. And I think that's big because we need to be vulnerable for our kids so that way they can see that we're all learning. We're all trying to improve. We're all after the same thing. And we're not immune to feedback. So let's talk about director discipline. We talked about how the director must model all that stuff. And if you want your students to, like I said earlier, ignore a school announcement, then you ignore it and you show them what it looks like to do that and move on. You want them to ignore cars passing by your rehearsal honking or yelling, you ignore it. You say, all right, let's do that rep again, and don't even say anything. You want them to be not tired in marching band rehearsals after school when it's like super hot. You model it. You model hydration. You model everything that you want them to do. When I first started teaching high school, we had rehearsal in the afternoons. It was super hot, and I was always super tired. And I was like, I'm not even 30 yet, and I'm still like super tired out here, and I want these kids to be motivated and whatever. So I took it upon myself to start being more physically active and being more hardcore with that. So that way, once I'm out there, I can model what I'm looking for with these kids. And it's helped a lot. And we have a lot of kids that work out, and we have kids that are super buff. It's insane. We have kids that are gymnasts that are super talented, like at the state level. And in our show last year, we had them do a backflip. They would put their trumpets down and then boom, do a backflip, and it was pretty cool. But they all really cultivate their physical fitness, and it's because we model that. One thing I hate in rehearsals is phones. Phones drive me nuts just because I know kids are not paying attention when I'm giving instruction, and so I always was on them about that, and then I was like, hey, I'm on my phone in my own rehearsal. How bad is that? And then I was like, okay, I'm going to put my phone away. And I'm teaching rehearsal, and I look, and this is when I was a head middle school director. I would see my assistant on their phone, and I was like, hey, let's not do that. If it's really important, let's step outside of the room and take care of it. It's fine if stuff happens. I totally understand that. But we need to model what we expect from our students. So I'm not allowed to get angry with kids when I don't expect the same expectation. So be really diligent about that. Be super disciplined on it. And like I said earlier, every single rehearsal is on a time schedule at Richland High School. We're super meticulous about that. And one thing I did to help my sectionals and my band get way better is I would record on Fridays on whatever repertoire we're playing, and then I would type out notes on it and then make a sectional schedule. And so I would email that out to the students. And so they would get that sectional schedule, and nobody read it. I was like, man, I spent 7 hours doing that. And I was kind of upset, but I was like, you know what, let me put the ownership on them. And so We went through 1 week where they didn't look at it at all, and I was a little offended, maybe brokenhearted, but it's okay. So I was like, how can I turn the tables on that and make it more effective? I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll just type the lesson plan on there, and then I'll have them tell me what's next. So I'd say, okay, what fundamental are we gonna start with today? And they're like, concert app. I was like, is that what I wrote? Wrote where? So, and the email that I sent, and so I had them all get it out so I can make sure that they can access it. I was like, what fundamental we're starting out with today? We're gonna do isometric lip slurs. Yes. So then we'll start doing that. And then I'll stop the metronome. What's next? And they'll tell me. And then we get to our repertoire. It's like, okay, what are we gonna hit next? We're gonna do Chester measures 52 to 72. We're gonna work on articulation here and make sure that we can get it at this tempo. And so they already knew what was up. The next week, I just found the metronome. I was like, first thing, second thing, third thing. And it was a super organized rehearsal in that they knew what was coming up, they knew what to practice, and we were super successful because of it. So I highly recommend you implement something like that. It may not be a sectional, it could be a band rehearsal, a full band rehearsal, or what have you. But I feel like that placed a lot of ownership on them, and because of that, they were super successful. The one thing that we need to always cultivate is urgency. Urgency is what's going to help push kids to the next level, and that urgency is going to change from wherever you are in the season. So like, if we're at the very beginning of the season, or we're at the very beginning of beginning band, maybe that urgency is finding which end to blow through. That's okay. Maybe that energy or urgency is going to be playing right notes and rhythms. Maybe later on that urgency is articulation. Maybe later on that urgency is going to be playing in tune. It just depends. But you always have to have urgency on some facet of music. For me, I like getting through all of my UIL material with no bet by TMEA, and that seems kind of early, but we have had in the past 2 years a snow week every single year, and we lose a whole week of instruction. I'm just like, we have to have this down. It's a non-negotiable. I remember the first year we had it, we called it Snowvid, and it was awful because we had UIL like the first week of March, so it was super scary. But that's going to happen. And if you're in Texas, maybe this is everywhere, but we have lots of testing, especially if you're in ECISD. You have lots of testing. So you want to teach your stuff as quickly as possible because you want to get to the nitty gritty as quickly as possible too. And having that goal of teaching all UIL material by TMEA is going to help you out tenfold. So as you go throughout your processes, throughout your year, you must own all of your failures. It's important to see, for your kids to see you fail as a director, because it's going to happen a lot, and that's super okay. You're going to acknowledge, hey, I wasn't very organized today. Whatever we didn't achieve today, that's on me. That's okay to say that. That's going to help with the relationship thing. It's going to show the kids that you're human. It's going to show them that you also have very high expectations for yourself, which I think is crucial. And so they're going to, at some point in their life, experience failure, and they need to know how to deal with it and how to be mature about it. So think about what your model is for a rehearsal. I always think about what I want my rehearsal to look like. Fortunately, I was taught by Don Lefevre and Russ Tevelite in my formative years as a band director, and so I learned what a rehearsal should look like. And so, oh, and Russ Tevelite too, because he knows how to give you really, really good jokes. Because, like I said, or like he said, 7th grade humor, we got that. But those three gentlemen being in their bands, and Dr. Garner, I learned what, I said Dr. Garner earlier, I learned what a rehearsal should look like. And so I always model what I do after that. And so we'll have rehearsal, and I always give myself a grade as a teacher. Maybe that grade is, I give myself a B today, because I was kind of organized, but I didn't really execute this well. But then maybe I give the kids an A, because they were working super hard, doing everything I asked. So maybe that, because they were given an A, that brings my grade down because I wasn't meeting where they were. I didn't have the same energy as they did. So I really didn't do a really good job that day. And so maybe I give myself a D. It's okay. but you always want to look at every rehearsal that you do and give yourself a grade. And that kind of keeps the momentum going as far as what you're doing as a band director and keeps those high expectations for you. So going on to my last slide. At least I think it's my last slide. No, it's not. Second to last. So regularly question the status quo. I think it's very important that we observe other programs. You can observe people teaching at very affluent schools, people at low socioeconomic areas. There are fantastic teachers in both spectrums, and there's people that do incredible things. I remember when I was at Travis Middle School in Amarillo, I had about 98% kids on free and reduced lunch. So we had every instrument provided for them, everything. And so I had heard of this name, Ricky Flores in San Antonio. Does anybody know that name? He's an incredible band director. He was in the inner city of San Antonio, and his bands played incredible music. They were always like in the top 5 of the state honor band stuff, and they were incredible. But there's these kids, like the campus would get on lockdown every day when the bell rang, so like the gates were closed. He couldn't do sectionals, he couldn't do anything. All he had to do, or all he could do, was motivate the kids to practice more, be better people, and be better musicians. And I learned so much from him. And so that's where that observation comes into play. You want to talk to people and figure out who's in your field, who's doing your craft, and who's doing it the best, and who's doing it in different ways. I always observe once a year. I'll observe drum corps, I'll observe high schools, I'll observe middle schools. Even to this day, I still observe middle school beginning classes, because it's always good to go back and see what that world is like as a high school director, because odds are I'm dealing with the same problems in my band, unfortunately. But that's okay, because we want to get more established pedagogy. Record your rehearsals. I do that every single day, and it's taxing because I have an hour-and-a-half rehearsal every day with my non-varsity band. So I'll record it, and then as soon as that's over, I'll listen to it and take notes, and then move on to the next day. And so I have a really, really good idea of what's going on, and I always find new things to work on by doing that. And then share those recordings with people. And it's okay to reevaluate your procedures, because Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's okay to assess what's going on. And really, if I wanted to copy and paste from another band program and put it in mine, there's going to be some different things that are going to be at play. So you know what's best for your students, and just always push for it. So once you have a great culture, incredible things are going to happen. I had this one student, we in like 2012 lost our jazz band program, and so once COVID hit, we had to restart everything, and we thought it'd be a good time to restart our jazz band program. And so I was excited to do it, but I was scared at the same time, because we were not the jazz band program we were back in 2012, but it was exciting to start that again. And I had a bassoonist who's a freak kid. He was an okay bassoonist, but he was 6 foot tall, like literally, or probably 6'5", and he was built for bassoon, literally. And so he wanted to be in jazz band. I was like, well, you ain't gonna play bassoon in there. And so he wanted to play tenor sax, and so he played that in there, and he was okay. And I gave him some improv stuff and whatever, and he blew up. He was incredible. He was our best soloist, and he's playing on his secondary instrument, and he couldn't tongue on it, but we figured that out. And then he became our soloist for our marching show last year, and he was phenomenal. Every time he performed, everybody would scream because it was so good. Now he's off to study at LSU and get his undergrad in jazz studies, and he's such a brilliant musician. And you know, all I did was give him the tools to do that, and we had a culture in the jazz band early on, and we had a lot of kids be successful, but he took it and ran with it, and because of him, the jazz band program has been incredible. And so once you have those culture things, like I said, it's going to shock you. Things like that are going to happen, and it's going to be incredible. There's never going to be a day where it's achieved. You're always constantly working towards it, and the the more you work towards it, the better it's going to be. And before you know it, it's going to be super incredible. As you look at your procedures, find problems and things that you want to fix, there's always little facets of your procedure that can be modified to be successful. And now we go to our final slide, and it's just a thank you slide for everybody that has influenced me. Mainly the people that have influenced me are my students. These are the people that inspire me to work harder. There's kids that are super self-motivated and are going to be incredible musicians. And those kids are great to teach. We love teaching those kids. But when you have the kids that are not motivated by music, that are not motivated to practice on their own, those are the kids that motivate me, because I kind of see myself in them, and I need to figure out how to be a better teacher for them. Not only for the kids that are already going to be little Mozarts, but I need to be there for those kids that don't have everything at home, that have a broken home. And maybe they're not motivated by music because they just don't have a good home life. And so it's my responsibility to help them, motivate them, and find something in this world that's going to discipline them and make them model citizens. The band staff that I work with is super talented. It's Mike Pickrell on the left, the head director, and then Peyton Grunsky right there. She's a fabulous young teacher. She's in her 3rd or 4th year teaching. I can't remember exactly, but she's incredible. She's right now on staff with Bluecoats, and she's amazing. And that's me with that dumb hat. But it's a good hat. It has like astronaut like stuff on the top so it reflects the sun. Perfect for marching band. Look it up on Amazon. It's really good. But my mentors have been awesome. They've motivated me. A lot of them are West Texas people, and they have made me not only successful here, but they've made me successful all over the state. They've given me so many opportunities. So I want to thank them. And then my wife and family. My family has always pushed me, and my wife is also a band director. She teaches in Coppell ISD, and she's a really fabulous middle school director. But that's basically it. So does anybody have any questions on anything? Does anybody have any questions maybe on their procedures that they've seen or behaviors in their band that they want to address? It's okay to be a little vulnerable with that. Yes?
How would you create a band culture in a school that doesn't have a very good culture in itself? It doesn't come like the top-down culture is not very good. Mm-hmm. So how are some tips on the school like that?
Okay. Well, when I was at Travis Middle School, it's a wild campus, very wild. And I say that because the discipline is insane. There's constant discipline referrals. There's constantly, unfortunately, things going on. And I don't know where I got this idea from, and I don't want to say it's mine, but I had a sign on the band hall that said the best students on this campus walk through these doors, and that was for the band hall. And so I had that there, and I made everybody look at it every day. And if they came in being wild, I would kind of remind them of that. And I was like, I don't care what's going on out there. Yes, there's a fight going on. That's okay. We're going to be in here and be cool. We're going to be normal. And like I said, you have to kind of model that. And whenever something wild happens in the school, you just don't acknowledge it's like, hey, we're just going to do business here as usual. And what Cody Meyer said about being their friend outside of rehearsal, I think once you build that relationship, that culture will build too. So just having that expectation, I think, of, yes, we know the school doesn't have big spirit maybe, but we are. Does that kind of help?
Yes.
Okay. And also too, I had higher procedures than the entire school, and we relish that. Like, oh my God, your students or your friends in other classes, they talk, like have conversations while the teachers are talking. Isn't that crazy? Like, yeah, that never happens in here. So kind of be a little smug about it. I think it's okay to have a little bit of smugness about it. Anybody else have any questions on that? Yes?
What do you do when you're in the middle of rehearsal and everything's going wrong? And like, even if you're like, okay, this isn't working, let's switch, let's do this. or like it's just like not happening?
What I do is I don't stay on the podium. We'll do maybe if it's like a rough day, like they just got out of testing and they're gonna come and be wild, but you still have to rehearse because you have like 4 rehearsals before a big performance. Then I would do a lot of loops. Like we're gonna play these 8 measures over and over and over, and I do that not because we're trying to get those 8 measures better, not because I want to kill their face, but I want them to just keep moving and not move. It's like, I'm going to give you 8 measures of information, do it again. And meanwhile, I'm going to be walking around the room, and if someone's like talking, be like, stand right in between them, or whatever. I don't have to do anything verbally. I don't have to call them out like, hey, stop talking, because that's going to make them talk even more. But I think me just standing by them and them constantly having the horn at their face, that's one reason why band is superior to orchestra, because they can talk and have fun, and the band, you gotta shut up unless you're playing percussion, then that's different. But that's one thing that I'll do, and if it keeps happening, I'll keep doing it, and then after a while, I'll kind of lay back on that, and then we'll get back into the normal scheme of things. But whatever you gotta do to keep them busy, I think I'm pretty good at classroom management, and I think it's because I keep my instruction really, really fast. I don't have time to think about what they're going to say because they're going to get ready to play the next thing. I hope that helps. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry for I'm probably going to bore everybody. I'm still I'm about to finish school to be a band director. So I haven't had my own classroom. It's all I'm a guest in another teacher's room.
Yeah.
And you talked a lot about expectations and classroom culture. But that first day of school, I remember when I was in school, we would go to each class and they would sit and they'd read their handbook. Is that how did you on that first day of school pass through to your students this big the unique expectations of band, but without all right, here's the school handbook, or maybe it is like that. I don't know, but just because in other classes their eyes are glazed over when you do that with them. So I don't know, just maybe ways to.
Yeah. When I was a middle school band director, we had that down to a science, and so I'm glad you asked that question. The very first day, I already start with the expectation that we're going to come into the room quietly. I'm like, hey, I'm really excited for you to be a band. Aren't you excited? Yes. All right, get out. And so we all get out, and I'm just like, let me model how we're going to walk into the room. We're going to get to our spot silently, okay? And then I'm going to start doing roll or whatever and start talking about stuff. But we'll walk in and out, and so it's not a done deal the first day. I'm going to be doing that for a long, long time. And hopefully, like I said, by October for middle school, that'll be just a procedure. So you walk in silently, it's you have a lot of excitement, and I'm excited for you. But we need to put that excitement into very organized learning, very organized energy, so that way we can be very successful, because you're going to be amazing in band. But we have to put all the energy in really good places, and it's going to be good for you. And so you got to model that on day one. You have to know, man, when I go to band, I got to be different. And it kind of goes along with what we're talking about, that first day expectations. I think those are big, and modeling how you want them to enter the room. And we'll do that, like I said, for a couple weeks, and then there's going to be probably 10 more times throughout the fall semester where they're going to screw that up, and that's okay. And it's cool because once they get into the top band, everybody will come in quietly because they've done it so much as beginners. And then I remember when I was at the peak of having the best just classroom entrance, there'd be a kid that would walk in out of all the quiet kids, and get out. So he would walk out, kind of compose themselves, and then come in. So that's one thing I would do just for day one and just keeping that going. Is there anything you want to clarify on that? Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But yeah, day one. Any other questions on that? Yes.
How do you teach the culture of warming up before rehearsal to babies, beginners, or the third band out of middle school?
Okay. With those groups, we don't usually do that because they're a little wild. Yeah. But so if you wanted to do that, you can. And I've had that happen too, where kids are going to test their reads or whatever before class starts because something comes up and they have to do something or whatever. We model what that looks like. And so we rehearse that. It's like, hey, I want you to do this for 8 counts. I want you to do this for whatever, and then you're going to go to this exercise, and you model that. That's the only thing I want to hear you play. I don't want to hear you play like Mortal Kombat. I want you to play like these specific exercises. So model that, rehearse it with them, and then let them do it on their own. And you just watch and make sure that they're doing it. It's going to take time out of your rehearsal, and that's okay, but show them what you expect. Anything else? I know we're getting close to time. Oh, you got a question?
So, part of your culture, do you, going off of her question, do you have a handbook? Do they have something they sign? Do you have an agreement? Like, can you expand on that?
Mm-hmm. We have a very hardcore handbook that explains every single detail. And the first week of school, we go over the handbook and we talk about every single detail, and then we quiz them. Mainly what we do is we have them read the handbook to the rest of the class. And we go really into detail, like game day procedures. In middle school, we talk about how to take care of the instruments, why it's important. We talk about when it's okay to take your instruments home, where to store them, what their performance attire is going to be, make sure they have it at the very beginning, how we walk in the room, what happens when you get written up, not in band, but another class, because you're going to have to answer to me on why you were talking in your English class and being crazy. We even talk about dental work, when to schedule dental work, because you don't want to get to UIL and the day before it's like, oh, by the way, I'm going to get all my wisdom teeth pulled out. It's like, great, let's find a new soloist. So we go into extensive detail on that, and our website is richlandareabands.org, and our handbook is on there. And it's in gross detail about everything we expect. And we do that because whenever we get a question from a parent that's angry about, why can't my kid have their wisdom teeth removed this day? Then we tell them why. And then they understand. And so they'll have read that too. But yeah, I think we're getting close to the time where I have to quit. But thank you so much for being in this clinic. I hope that you got to learn from what we've made mistakes with. And if you have any questions, I'll be around all week.
You don't teach in the mornings, right? Like the 9 to noon block?
Yes, I do. I teach tuba.
Oh, okay. I was going to say they could hunt you down, but...
Yeah.
But you're around. You're in the director's lounge a lot. So
yes,
if
you want to see a lot of stuff on buzzing and what we do with that at Richland, I do that with the tubas here, and it's incredible.
Which groups do you have?
I have the maroon, white, and honor tuba euphoniums.
Okay.
And so we're doing a lot of idiomatic buzzing stuff, so it's really cool what we do.
Thank you. Yeah.